All right, welcome everybody. We are so glad to have you. We're going to be talking about modernization efforts around ITSM, thinking about how we take service management practices, how we use AI and automation to improve those, right, with real examples. So with me, I have Doug Foster, and Doug is a CIO at the South Carolina Department of Commerce. My name is Andrew Graff. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Team Dynamics. So we're going to have a conversation today. It's also going to be interactive. So we're going to ask some questions along the way. And at the end, we'll actually have a demonstration from one of my colleagues, Alicia, who will take some of the things we're talking about and actually demonstrate them. So for those visual learners out there, fear not. We will have some examples for you, and we'll have time for some questions. So if you don't know who Team Dynamics is, I'm going to give you a really high level overview. So we're a no-code service management platform that integrates AI and automation to make sure that people are allowed to do what they do best and try to remove headaches. So really, really powerful capabilities, but with a very attractive cost of ownership, meaning easy to maintain, easy to manage, et cetera. And it includes service management tools, project portfolio management, enterprise service management, and AI, and a really, really strong automation layer. And we have clients from about 25 different industries. So enough about us. So the first question we have, where are you in your modernization journey? So there's three choices: foundational. Hey, we have ITIL or are adopting ITIL, basic knowledge management, some basic workflows. We manage some projects as it relates to implementing new services. We're changing services. Moderate, meaning we're getting into enterprise service management. So service management has escaped the IT barn, and now it's moving on to other departments. We might have change management processes in place. We're doing more with workflow and maybe integrating with systems to pull information. And then advanced. Advanced is when we're getting into far more automation, right? We're implementing virtual agents to take action. We're using AI to assist technicians, and we are using a lot of self-service, So let's go ahead and just take a second here. All right, good. Okay, looks like we have a quorum. So let me go ahead and share the results here. So it looks like the largest cohort is going to be foundational. So this is helpful. This helps us decide what we talk about. But I think there's going to be something in here for everybody. And the idea is that the concepts we're talking about transcend a particular product, right? Hopefully, if you're not using the Team Dynamics product, you still get some ideas and some great takeaways. So that would be my objective. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about enterprise service management. So everyone, I think most people on this are probably familiar with IT service management. IT does a great job, and there are frameworks like ITIL for better managing service. Enterprise service management takes service management principles out to HR and marketing and facilities and other areas who need to manage work, need to deliver service. And what that does is it allows an organization to operate more fluidly. So as work needs to happen across the organization, there's a similar vernacular with the tools and processes they're used. But you're not forcing IT speak on HR or HR speak onto facilities, right? We've certainly seen that as being a inhibitor to progress. So, when we talk about this, I want to dive in, and I talked about some of the departments, right, that we often see. Doug, this is an area where at the Department of Commerce, you've really accelerated and found some success. Can you walk us through your experience with enterprise service management?
Yeah, I think I have deep knowledge in ITSM and ITIL and have gone down that road for decades at this point. And the sort of applicability of large pieces of those processes and tools, et cetera, are amazingly powerful in the business. And the way we came upon it was we were struggling with things like visibility into, hey, I've asked for a thing from marketing, or I've asked for a thing from HR. I don't know where it's at exactly. I can't tell how long it's going to take. There's a lot of missed communication, those kinds of things. So we implemented some basic workflows in the ESM tool, and I can just tell you that the sort of cost benefit there is insane. It didn't take much to implement. Pretty straightforward. If you're familiar at all with the ITSM pieces, it's pretty straightforward request management kind of thing. But in these disciplines that have not had that kind of structure and process before, it's a game changer. And it's not only visibility from the sort of consumer side, from the person requesting, but also being able to manage a workload on the provider side. So in human resources, as an example, they have much better visibility into what kinds of things are people asking for, what are our most used services, what takes the longest to turn around, who are our biggest customers, internal customers, all just lots and lots of information that previously just went into the ether, and no one could really tell what was going on. So it's been phenomenal for us, and we plan to keep going. We're looking for more and more opportunities to sort of roll out further in the agency.
And Doug, can you talk about the process through which other departments became interested, right? When somebody, how did you generate interest, or did they come to you? And then what did the process look like when somebody was interested? What did you go through to help enable them?
Yeah, so I guess the interest really it was different for each component here. Each sort of leadership or each area came at it a little bit differently. Some saw what we're doing in IT around request management and being able to report back to leadership, this is where our resources go and those kinds of things. And they got intrigued from that perspective, like how are you doing that? How's that happening? So we turned them on to, look, you can do the same kinds of things in ESM. Others mostly came about it from the perspective of frustration or a problem set, like I'm losing things, or requests are getting lost, or they're getting buried in emails, or whatever mechanism they happen to be using. And then we would sort of walk them through, here's a possibility, or here's an opportunity. And once they showed up, it's a little bit contagious, a little bit of a sort of flywheel thing. It starts moving, and then the momentum is crazy. We actually cut off functions in the business at one point because we're saying, okay, we got enough. We got a full plate right now. The implementation is really pretty straightforward and simple. We formed a small project team of leaders from all these areas, and we walked through their process and basic processes, and the implementation and configuration is super simple. The most complicated one we did was marketing. We used the workflow engine, which is pretty much drag and drop, and one of my techs here did it very simply, pretty quickly. But the workflow is pretty complicated. It's a pretty sophisticated, with approvals and then multiple design reviews and all this kind of stuff. And it was all done drag and drop, and it's pretty amazing. I'm very impressed with the workflow engine. I can say that.
And as you're thinking about the way to roll these out and then kind of maintain or support the departments, what would you counsel the audience as they're thinking about this? Hey, you roll it out, right? How did you enable those departments? And then what are some things to think about post rollout for these departments?
Yeah, I would, if I'm honest with you, post is not much. I mean, what we have primarily done post implementation is just talk about ways that I would call it sort of mine the data. So it's mostly just been about, you can know these things. People don't always recognize, oh, I guess I could figure out, like when a great example is, and one that actually came about because of this implementation, the Human Resources Department was for years saying we don't have enough people. And then figured out, oh, we can actually take a business case forward based on real requests and real data and real usage and all that to sort of justify getting help and getting a position. It's not just we're not just crying in the woods. We've got real data to support that. So that's been the biggest post implementation, is mostly just how do you get the most out of this? Bringing people to it, I mean, even the training components of it were tiny, nominal. And we took the approach under the advisement of our implementation consultant, who was brilliant, by the way, and tried to keep it as consistent as we could look and feel, so that if you go to accounting, it doesn't look a heck of a lot different than HR and that kind of a thing. So it makes the user community adoption I mean, we just did a survey and got feedback on it, and people are like thrilled. They're like, it's one stop, simple. I don't have to figure out how do you interact with marketing and how's that different than facilities, because it's all kind of one stop shopping. So the biggest components really on the front end are what I'll call technician training, the people that will be fielding the tickets and have to navigate. And even that, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple.
Yeah, a couple points that I can obviously I can reiterate based on my experience across our customer base is number one, talking about the flywheel. So once one department outside of IT adopts, and then the leadership and people in those other departments see how much better it is, they're not out of spreadsheets, that custom built tool that IT has to maintain for them, they can't get changes made to, or older tech, it starts that interest. Then I think one other thing that I see is the no code aspect, being able to build forms and workflows. It makes it a lot easier. And what we find is for the HR team and the marketing team, they want IT's help to set it up, but they don't want to have to go back to IT every time they want to change a form, or they want to add a new service, or they want to post knowledge. They don't want to have to do that. So that's been a big boost as well. I don't know if you found that to be true.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the even the most sophisticated sort of process that we've embedded in team dynamics, the marketing flow is really, I mean, it's drag and drop. I mean, you can just look at it and see, oh, I see how this works, and make adjustments, and it definitely gets out of the sort of making IT requests to do development or configuration. That they can do these things on their own. They don't need us.
The thing that we really focus on is we want to be, from a product perspective, we want to be the best ratio of capability to ease of ownership, right? I mean, we don't want you to have an army of software developers or deeply technical people to actually get great usage out of the product. A lot of the products we replace require 5, 10, 15 or more people to maintain them. Very expensive, infinitely customizable, but it's hard to get that off the ground and maintain it. It's very heavy, right? So we really focus on providing that balance between the two, and we've done really, really well with that. As we're talking about this, and you've heard, Doug and I talk about it, new audience poll, how many of your teams are using enterprise service management? Are you practicing enterprise service management? So they have solutions in place, right? They're using a defined set of workflows and processes. So just take a minute and answer. And again, this will help us understand where the audience is and maybe tailor our responses accordingly. So just take a minute here and fill this out. That'd be great. And we'll give it another probably 5 seconds, and then I think we'll have a quorum here to give us a good idea that the percentages aren't changing much. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. So it looks like the largest cohort has a few. So you've started the enterprise service management journey, and then the next largest cohort is not at all. So hopefully this gives you some food for thought and things to think about. So that's very helpful. So you think about enterprise service management, there's a couple, I would say, considerations. When you have a checklist of things, on the right-hand side is our product schema, kind of overview of the different areas with, the self-service portals, the knowledge base, the AI and integration layer, which we'll get to. in a moment, and then the tools to actually manage the work that makes it to a person. But if you think about the ability to create new applications without coding, being able to support each department so you don't have to shoehorn HR into the structure for IT, and that could be for their knowledge base, right? If they have an existing knowledge base, or marketing has an existing knowledge base, or service portal or forms, you don't want to have to force that, but you want it to work across the organization. And then in a no code way, being able to build workflows and custom forms, look for automation opportunities, and the ability to tailor it to the business, right? And we'll talk a little bit about virtual service agents, and again, AI assistance for people here in a minute. So I wanted to shift gears quickly. Doug, I know that your organization started with the program and portfolio management side. So there was pronounced pain with prioritizing work, understanding resource capacity, and a project or a program or portfolio, at the end of the day, implements a new service, fundamentally changes an existing service, or deprecates a service. So can you talk to us a little bit about the pains that you had and what you did to solve them?
Yeah, it's, we often said, and we talk to our implementation consultant frequently, it was a little bit of a double take more than a few times on starting with PPM. But the reason that we went that route was at the enterprise level, and this is all enterprise project management. We just recognized a lot of loose cannon kind of initiatives, people, just things getting spun up and started, and there's no visibility or awareness, and starting to consume resources, way overcommitting resources, the same person assigned to 6 different projects, that kind of thing. And it felt like for us, that was sort of the top of the funnel. That was the place where we said, we've got to get that workload, those sort of initiatives under control first. And so we just, it was pretty simple processes, pretty basic layout of what we sort of included in projects, but we put together what we call a feasibility team, which was as a project comes in the door, people make requests of, this is the sort of project idea. It looks like a business case loosely, shows up to a group that makes a determination about, this is viable enough that now we want to kind of move it into the prioritization process. And then once there, the project managers get assigned to it, and they do their thing, their milestones and timelines and resource planning and all those. And it's really, it's even as of today, it's really changed the way we think about work coming into the agency, the whole agency, the organization. It started to really become a much larger discussion about what are the real strategic priorities and how do we keep people focused on them. And I can tell you that the PPM product has had a major impact in that discussion. So for us, it wasn't terribly difficult or painful implementation to get it there. It was mostly just a sort of tracking effort and getting that funnel that, if you're going to start a project, it needs to come through this funnel. And then it kind of just took care of itself from there.
It's interesting. We hear about these pains all the time where, you've got to get your arms around what's going on in the organization, and clients saying, look, I need to be able to push back on unreasonable expectations. I need a way to demonstrate the kind of resource consumption that the current initiatives have if somebody wants to shoehorn something in. And I also want to make a point that if you're looking for technologies to support this, right, this sort of blended service management, project portfolio management, the key is the program and portfolio and resource capacity. Like, the ability to manage a project is valuable, but the ability to plan, prioritize projects into portfolio and programs and show that executive view and that resource capacity view are absolutely critical within the context of of your organization. I mean, how do you look at it? I mean, is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that happened, the one level of maturity step that we made in this was the recognition that uh, I think in the beginning, the thought process was, yes, we need to keep track of and make sure we're not double booking or overbooking or underbooking in cases our IT resources.
Mhm.
And then it dawned on people, wait a minute, no, we need to know whether we're double booking all of our people. And it just became, it was definitely, it completely changed the conversation. It felt a lot more business centric. It felt a lot more strategic and impactful. And it just sort of changed the game when people realized, no, we're talking about all resource consumption. It totally, I can tell you, we just had a discussion this morning and it was centered around this exact topic where now we can see it. Now we can see what's happening.
I think it's very, very impactful. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about service management with automation, right? This is a major I think trend, and what I'm really excited about is the tools to accomplish the vision or reach that vision of being able to take off the plates, the things that people don't need to do and don't want to do, the tools I think are actually available. And so when you think about automation, right, think about all of the things in your organization that take somebody's time, that they don't like to do, where the recipient of that service doesn't want to wait for it, right? Or it's error prone, or it should be able to happen in near real time, any time of the day. Think about if you can take a check, make a checklist of those are really good candidates for automation. And in a moment, I'm going to layer on AI on top of that. But here's some examples of what we see clients using automation for and pairing that with AI as well. So the things like getting access to software, someone has to change their name or someone wants to change a permission for someone in their group. Really, really powerful and a really interesting study that Information Week did. They found that most IT team members, 58% of the organizations responding to this, or 1,500 organizations, their people spend 2 to 3 months a year doing these types of things. So to let that sink in for a minute, and I'm not suggesting that your organization is doing that, but if you took the list of those types of activities like I described, put a number on about how long it takes somebody to click the mouse enough times to get it done and send the follow-up email or update the ticket, whatever it is, and then do some basic multiplication. That'll give you some idea. So what would happen if you had that time back? What would that do for you if you're budget constrained, right? If you have 300 applications that you're supporting, you have 300 applications you're supporting that are constantly changing in shadow IT where the demands keep going up, but your budgets don't. Just that's the equation. What's also really interesting, 89% of the people who responded to this said that this type of work contributes to their people leaving. It contributes to attrition, them quitting their jobs. And I don't know about your organizations, but when we find somebody really good, it is very painful if you lose them. So that's just kind of framing that up. So do a quick audience poll, and then Doug, I want your input on this once we hear from the audience. So if you could automate anything, I should say from this list, we can't just have an open, it'd be hard to sort through that, but choosing from this list, what would you automate? What would be that thing that would release the pressure on your organization the most? And then we have the choices: offboarding, onboarding, password reset, software provisioning, Active Directory updates, or there is an option, hey, everything we need to automate is automated. I do know organizations that are like that. They're very few at this point, but I do know some. Doug, this one's really popular. Lots of people are responding to this one, it looks like. All right, I am going to, looks like we have a quorum and things aren't changing that much. Okay, so you can see the results. Offboarding, onboarding, bar none. This is something that I see regularly as an automation target because it involves so many departments. No one likes it. It impacts that new team member's experience, and the risk of not offboarding somebody appropriately is just too high. So Doug, how do you react to this? Are these things that your organization feels? I mean, what are you seeing,
Hundred
Department of
percent.
Commerce?
If I filled it out, I would have definitely been on on and offboarding for all the reasons you just mentioned. And one of the things that ESM has helped with is that, if you think about it, it is a very, very cross-functional process to onboard and offboard, right? A lot of times, if an employee is being hired, we in IT as an example, or in finance or wherever, they don't necessarily know that. And they have a really, really, really critical role to play. And if there's just a lot of clunky handoffs and papers being shuffled around, and right, sometimes employees could be here for, a long time before they have everything they need that they should have had on day one. So that's one part of the problem. And the offboarding thing, the risk thing, it's not a good thing if people are carrying credentials that don't work for your organization anymore. And it's really simple for that to fall through the cracks. So for us, that's been massive. That's been super. We actually had a security finding around offboarding, and we've now closed that finding based on what we've implemented. So that's a big one.
Yeah, it's funny. I strangely enough, just a week or two ago, I spoke with an organization that inadvertently hired a North Korean spy as a software developer. And that offboarding process, you better believe that that was critically important. As soon as they realized it, that all the dominoes fell in an automated fashion to close those gaps and assess the damage, right? So that's a very extreme example, but I think it illustrates the point of how important it is to have some of these things that you can do very, very quickly and consistently. So, I think about when you think about automation, right? I know your organization has invested. I think there's a great story about Intune, some of the things you've done from an automation standpoint. Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, we're moving on lots of fronts here. And so one of the things that we were in the process of doing was a cloud migration, and we went to Intune for sort of the device management component. And the automation and integration with Team Dynamics it was one of those moments for me. We were talking about, well, we got an inventory of the assets, and we got to get that inventory, and maybe we can use a discovery tool, and we've got to get that into Team Dynamics, and all, it was like, okay, this is going to be a whole big chunk of work to do. And the implementation consultant said, oh, if all of your assets are sitting in Intune, basically she said, watch this. And she went in and set up a connection to Intune, and literally, I am not exaggerating, in 5 minutes, all of our assets, serial numbers, makes, models, all of it just populated in Team Dynamics. It was one of those, it took a whole chunk of our implementation time off the table because of that integration. It was crazy.
From an impact perspective, we're always looking for ways. How do we improve? And from a product perspective, if you sit in one of our product meetings, the constant question we're asking is, how can we use technology to make everybody who's part of the service equation or project equation better off, right? How can we provide service to customers faster in a more efficient way when they want that? But when they don't, how can we enable a person to respond more quickly, more accurately, with less hiccups to deliver a good service and take burden off of them? And in this Intune example, it's great, right? Been debating, do we build an endpoint management tool? Do we acquire one? Well, Intune has 85% market share and growing. Once they added Linux and Mac support, that was a game changer for them. And so we said, okay, rather than build a product that we need to then go charge customers for, per endpoint, $25 a year, they almost all own Intune. Let's help them get a better return on that. So let's integrate seamlessly. And now, for example, your technician doesn't need to leave the asset in Team Dynamics to take one of the actions in Intune that are most common. You can always still open it in Intune, but if I need to restart something, just do it right from there. Don't have to go anywhere. So we're constantly looking for ways to help clients get better use out of their existing investments, right? And that was just an example that we've come to. And I think we'll see more of those going forward. So I want to talk about no code, right? That the fact that you don't have to have a software developer or an incredibly deep technical resource to build the system. How important has that been for you and your team?
Well, it's, you know, one of the things, and I'm assuming most of the people listening have some IT bent or at least understand sort of that dynamic. But the big challenge is often not creation, right? You can create a thing, and that's great. But now for the rest of your life, it takes care and feeding. And that's been the biggest barrier for us when we're trying to do integration or bring up a new functionality for the business or whatever. It's not about the initial build, you know, there's a dollar and time associated with that, and that's not the concern. It's this ongoing cost, total cost of ownership, sort of for the rest of your life. And what we've found is, and I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier, really post implementation, there's not much care and feeding here. There's not much to do. These pieces all fit together. They're extremely well integrated, and we frankly didn't do a ton of integrating lots of different platforms, but the ones that we have, it's it's seamless. We don't, there isn't really a support element. We created a workflow as an example, and an automation rule and a sort of a connection point, and we're done. We don't think about it anymore. So the reason that that's so critical, especially in the ESM space, is because there isn't always a technical workforce available to do these things. And if you start to get, let's say, 5 different parts of your organization now all requiring some changes and some support, it puts a big dent in the sort of IT resources. We don't see that. We don't get that. The units are, there are pieces that obviously need to be centrally managed, but for the most part, they take care of themselves.
Yeah. What I see is, a large part of our business is moving organizations off of really heavy, high maintenance requirement service management platforms, right? And I'm not here to, there's two primary that we move people off of. And I'm not here to bash the competition. Actually, I think there are certain platforms, if I were the CIO at a Fortune 100 multinational corporation where I had central IT buying and I could afford 40 or 50 people to work on my service management platform, and an upper seven-figure budget didn't flex my annual budget, I'm not a Team Dynamics customer. That's not our customer, right? Our customer is the organization who either bought one of those and they could never get it all implemented and were crumbling under the weight of it, and they didn't want to spend their FTE money on just maintaining the system. They wanted to get a system in place that was incredibly powerful that they could actually own and operate at a really good total cost of ownership. That's where we're seeing a huge part of the market migrate for all the reasons you just mentioned. And the I think as you think about it, it becomes even more important when we get into automation and AI, because
Mhm.
it is a couple things that I think are like the unwritten rules of AI. Really bad AI is really cheap and easy to implement. Really, really good AI can be really expensive and complicated. So again, what we're working to do is to bring the power of the good, what I would say, the good AI into a manageable place. So now, when we think about automation, we talked about all those things that use your people's time. Your clients are frustrated that they have to wait on a response. When we start thinking about virtual agents and layering on an interface that uses conversation, right, to execute these, it's a game changer. And great AI has very powerful integration and automation capabilities. AI is really valuable if it just answers questions from what we've seen. So it's basically you know, the ability to pull from a knowledge base and answer a question based on static content, that's valuable, but it starts to become really valuable if you can execute that name change or provision the software for somebody that they need, or start that onboarding process for someone through a conversational AI interface. And you need to have very robust integration and automation to do that, because the systems on the back end, it's not as simple as often, hey, I'm going to turn this thing on and put in some credentials to this and it just works. Every business has slight nuances in how they massage data and pull data, especially if it's coming from an HRIS, an ERP system. So the flexibility of an integration automation platform is a really big deal when you combine these. It's, some of the results we've seen, which I think are really, really interesting. The conversational AI plus automation tooling, we're seeing 30 to 70% reductions in inbound tickets that reach the desk. If that's a huge deal, and improved customer satisfaction. I'm not a fan of AI at all costs or every application. I don't believe in it, right? I think there are certain things people do that people will always do a better job of, especially complex requests. You have clients who don't know what they really need or asking for. They need somebody to guide them. But if you can deflect that many tickets from the desk and your satisfaction has gone up, again, think about what that does for you and your team. Now, the stat you're seeing here is actually for an AI assistant product that we launched. So your technicians are sitting there opening tickets, tooling to help them answer faster and more accurately, right? That looks through your knowledge, looks through your old tickets, looks at data sources that your industry is influenced by. So .gov sites where you have regulation, things like that. It helps them answer more quickly. It helps draft knowledge base articles when there isn't one. So the next time somebody has a question, it can be answered effectively. We're seeing 40 to 90% reduction in resolution times and about 80% acceptance rate of the ticket. So again, if you're doing the math in your head, these are real benefits that free your people time and take pressure off of you to need more budget to deliver high levels of service. That's, that 40 to 90% results in about 4 to 7 minutes per ticket on 80% of the tickets inbound. So if you think about that, again, I don't know your organizations, but you can do the math. So Doug and I have talked about a lot of concepts. My colleague Alicia is actually going to take some of these concepts and give you examples in the Team Dynamics product. Now, if you're not using the Team Dynamics product and you have other tools at your disposal, hopefully this will give you ideas because you will see a visual. So Alicia, I'm going to stop sharing and hand this over to you.
Okay. All right, so let me share my screen here. And so with that, today we are going to start in our end user portal, and we're going to see how your end users can request help from your team and how you can make that process really efficient for them. And then we're going to switch over to the team member side, see some automation, how multiple teams can utilize Team Dynamics, and lastly, how you can report on all of that data. So here, like I said, we are in the portal where your end users can get information and some how-to documentation, submit requests, and communicate with your team. So right here in the bottom right corner, you're seeing our virtual service agent. So right away as this starts up, we're seeing an automation. So we're actually looking up any outages that we're currently experiencing, and we're immediately notifying our end users of those. Now, maybe I need access to something. So if I type in access request here, it's going to give me a few different options, which of course this is all very customizable, but maybe I need access to this human resources group. Now, if this was something that didn't require an approval, we could fully automate that process and just give them access on the spot. However, being the human resources group, this is a sensitive group, so we want to make sure that we get the proper approval. And so we're going to come back to this ticket that was created in just a little bit. Now, let's take it up a notch. What if I say something like, when can I get a new phone? So with this, because because this knows who I am, it can truly personalize those answers for me. It's going to go look up my profile, look through those assets that I have, figure out which one is my phone, and respond accordingly to me. Now, here it told me that, hey, you are not eligible for replacement until this date. However, if I was eligible, it could ask me some additional questions and then go create a ticket for IT to go process that upgrade. So here I've shown you how it can integrate with team dynamics, but what else can we do here? So really the possibilities are endless. You are in no way limited to only integrating with team dynamics here. So just think of all those other systems that your organization uses, your HRIS, your ERP, whatever those other systems are. So here I can say something like, what's my PTO balance? And so with this, our virtual service agents can also pull from those other systems that you have to really pull everything into one place for your end users. So now let's switch over to our team member perspective. So with this, I wanted to take a look at that ticket that we submitted just a minute ago for that access request. So we had said that we want an approval before actually granting that access. So you can see that here we are currently waiting on that approval before we move on in the process. Now, if I open up this workflow here, like I said, we first got that approval, and then as soon as we do get that approval, then within the workflow, we can automate the process through this iPass step here. So in this step, what we're really doing is we're reaching out to Active Directory and we're adding that user to that appropriate group. And the great thing about these workflows is that you can have those manual steps where you need them, like these approvals, but you can automate the parts of the process where it makes sense to automate. Now, Andrew and Doug had also talked about ESM. So what does that look like? So here I am signed in as somebody who has access to everything. So I wanted to show you a little bit of that ESM aspect here. So you can see I've got a few different departments here where I have their own or their applications pulled up. So you can think of an application kind of like a bucket of tickets. They can have their own kind of personal space here. So here I've got human resources where they have things like cases and HR requests. I have marketing where they've got things like media and website services. And then here I've got facilities where they've got work orders and custodial services, preventative maintenance. So you can set up the nomenclature that works best for each department. And each one of these different applications can also have separate statuses, forms, workflows, automations. It gives each department a lot of flexibility in how they need it to be set up and how they want it to work. And the best part is they don't feel like they're being forced to use an IT tool. And then last, like Doug talked about earlier, we want to report on that data so we can share what our department is doing. So using these dashboards within Team Dynamics, you can really slice and dice that data in any way that you need. So you can mix and match different record types. So you can see here we have our projects with those project statuses, but we also have graphs showing different ticket statuses. And here we even have a graph of our survey scores. So you can have a mixture of standard and custom reports, meaning you can fully customize what data shows up here. So it makes it really easy to visualize all that data that you have within the system. So today we've seen how you can automate processes for your end users as well as for your technicians. And then we looked at how multiple departments can all utilize team dynamics while maintaining control in how they want to work. And last, we looked at how you can get visibility into and share that data that you have. So with that, I will turn it back over to Andrew and Doug.
Great, thank you, Alicia. A couple things I wanted to point out there. The first is with that conversational AI agent, that virtual service agent. We showed it on a website, right? Our client portal, but it's really important that when you're looking that you can meet the users where they are. So I think the biggest channel for us is probably Teams, but it integrates with Slack, Teams. So you can have those as channels as well. And I think that's really an important consideration. So hopefully you saw a bunch of the concepts we talked about. And on this slide, what I really wanted to discuss here was essentially, if you think about your ecosystem, all the different tools where answers may reside, or think about questions for which the answer requires information from multiple tools. That's where non-enterprise level automation, integration, and virtual service agents fall down, right? You might have a static out-of-the-box integration for Intune, for example, or for Workday. But what if what you need is lots of different systems? That's what we do, I think, better than anybody else in a no-code way. And so as you're envisioning this, if you can just go through that thought process of, hey, where are all of the answers that we need for people? Right? That's where I think we're going to really shine for you. And again, I think that's a strength of ours against the industry. So, you think about just summary, this all works together, right? I'm using our product diagram, but you think about if the funnel for new services and making changes to services are your projects, programs, and portfolios. And you need to make sure that you have the resources to do that. So you can push back on reasonable expectations, or at least say, hey, in order to do that, can we get consultants? Can we hire people? Right? It allows you to have a fact-based conversation with your stakeholders. Once systems are implemented, you have the service management capabilities to support and provide service requests, incidents, problems, changes, et cetera, and your enterprise service management. So all the other departments that also need to coordinate their work. And then underlying that, integration and automation, powering AI. Very, very important. And I think the concept too of having a no-code tool, unless you're in the category where if you can hire 20 people and into 7 figures budget is completely acceptable for you, right? We may not be the best fit. But if things resonated as far as the power of some of these capabilities, we might be worth a look. So we do have time for some questions. So there is a question area in Zoom that you can ask, and we have a couple here. So Jessica asked, can you write a testing script to run in Workday? I test all the time, every little change. So you have a change ticket, right? I want to test it. So what you could do there, and I'm going to have Alicia also weigh in here because she's an automation expert. Basically, if you have a change ticket for Workday and you have a workflow behind it, right? You can have an area that will call the integration automation platform, and we have Workday connectors. And depending on what you need to run, if you have that in your library and you've enabled that or built that little flow, every time that change goes through at a certain stage after, let's say you've tested it, you say, I've tested it, ready, I've tested it, I want to go ahead and run a script. Go ahead and do that, right? That is something that we would see similar type processes all the time. And Alicia, do you want to weigh in on that question a little bit?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different ways that you could do this. So you could definitely do things, utilizing that workflow where it calls that iPass, that iPass flow for sure. Another way that you could do it is if you do have this automated in another fashion, you could say, okay, every time I, run this through iPass where it tests that change, it's going to make a comment on a ticket or things like that. So there's different ways that you can do this, just depending on kind of what your needs are there.
Mhm. And Jessica asked another question. Can you map fields from one ERP to another so you could automate data entry? So you enter in one ERP and then it flows the data into another. And that is also something we can do with the integration automation platform. And iPaaS stands for Integration Platform as a Service. You heard Alicia use that acronym. But yes, and the idea that this is something we commonly see where you have data in one place, it needs to move to another in an automated way, and it might even need to be transformed along the way for continuity. That's something the solution's very, very good at doing. The other question is, do your products that connect data require working in that product, or do you have an API plug? So imagine this. It's a platform where you say, okay, I need to accomplish something. I'm either automating a process or I'm moving data from point A to point B. Maybe I'm creating new information from inputs from multiple systems. So that could be a data request of some sort that you're trying to fulfill. That could be an automation to take action, like change a permission in Active Directory. And what it gives you the ability to do is you have a palette, if you will. And imagine saying, okay, I wanna take information from a system, I drag that on, it's Workday. Okay, what information do I want from Workday? Okay, I choose it. And then I say, what do I want to do with it? Do I want to transform it? And then where do I want to put it once it's transformed? So I want to go into SAP. I'm just making this up because someone said 2 ERP systems. So then I want to change that format. And then what I want to do, I want to push that into SAP. And so imagine this palette where I have these tools where I can essentially organize what should happen when this process fires. Now, I could also use APIs that we have. So let's say it's not one of the, I think we have 300 connectors maybe with most of the common systems you'd see. Maybe you have a proprietary API or another vendor API. You could pull that in and wrapper it with a connector so you don't have to be looking at the JSON or understanding the JSON that comes through. You could actually be operating in the interface. And then if you wanted to look at the XML in the back end, you could. I mean, Alicia, would you change my response there at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the biggest thing is that, it doesn't have to be, a specific standard connector that we already have. Anything that you have API access to or access to the backend database, you would be able to connect to any of those.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And actually, Jessica said, "Hey, thanks. I'm a business analyst waiting into more into the IT pool." So you're the exact type of resource that we cater to, right? Because the what we're finding is sysadmins, business leaders have great ideas, but they don't want to wait 8, 12, 16 months for the deep technical resources to deliver it. They don't have to shoehorn into their process. They want to be able to build it, prototype it, test it, see how it works, make quick changes to it. So that's really our target here is resources who want to take an idea for a business improvement and actually implement it and maintain it and improve it throughout time. So that's a great, I'm glad you asked those questions. That's great. And then Jim asked and Sammy asked, will this recording be available? It will be sent out in a day or two after this, for sure. And then Doug, on closing, you saw what Alicia showed in the demo. Any parting thoughts, those lessons learned, right? If somebody was approached you where you were when you started this journey, what would you share with them now?
Do it sooner. I think from a couple things. One is that what we were really naive to walking in was just how simply you can get benefit and how quickly you can get benefit. We implemented all of PPM, all of ESM, all of ITSM in about a 10-month time frame. And we could have, from our perspective, we were thinking, gosh, we could have done this a year or more ago, and think about all the benefit we would have reaped in that time frame. So I think some of this is it's and you can wade into it. You don't need to go, you don't need to do what we did. You don't need to go full bore into this thing. You can kind of, like we talked about, you can get that flywheel moving and get people incrementally interested in it and continue it. We're going to continue to elaborate. We're going to get much more into iPaaS and connect a lot more things together. But my statement would have been, I wish we had done it sooner. I wish we had moved sooner than we did.
I hear that a lot, and to reiterate your point, a lot of times we see organizations taking the crawl, walk, run approach. They'll say, okay, we have a core set of use cases that we need to handle for IT. Let's get that done in a couple months, rather than 12 or 24 for some of these larger systems we often replace. Let's get that done. And then let's start crawling a little bit and we'll start implementing other departments and build momentum, right? You don't have to, there are very few organizations that have the executive support and the team support to boil the ocean. We do have them. Don't get me wrong. We do have them, and it's fabulous when there's alignment up and down the whole organization. That is not really common. So what you described, Doug, tells me there is great alignment in your organization, which is a fabulous place to be, but you don't have to have it to start getting benefit. And I mean, you know how it is, like being a human, right? We're all flawed in our own ways, but there's nothing like seeing somebody else do something in your organization that adds value. You're in that meeting and someone shows something they're doing that in department, and this light bulb goes off where you say, you know what? I'm going to call her and see how they did that because I would like to do that. And it helps to see that progress in the organization. And we see that flywheel effect all the time in the customer base. I think it's one of the biggest ways that we expand in our accounts is just over time to partner and say, hey, I want to do that too. And I don't want to have to start with something that's super overwhelming. So, Doug, thank you so much. This has been incredibly valuable, and I'm sure that everyone on this event took away a couple actionable things from your experience with the state. And it's a big role in a great organization, and really impressive what you guys have done. And Alicia, thank you very much as well. And if you want to know more about anything you heard here, go to teamdynamics.com. That is with an IX, or if you are an existing customer, you can go to your customer success relationship manager to ask more questions. And I am very suspect of any vendor who says they're going to be a good fit for every organization. It just doesn't happen, but we're happy to examine what your use cases are, and we'll be very honest with you if we think we can do a great job for you, or we can, point you in another direction as well. So thank you, everybody. Doug, thank you so much. Really, really exciting story.
Happy to do it.